Ancient Egypt holds secrets that can shatter our understanding of history. By the end of this journey, you will see a civilization of profound innovation and mystery that rewrites everything we thought we knew. We will uncover artifacts that suggest forgotten technologies and tombs that reveal lost rulers. How did a simple wooden object defy the principles of aerodynamics? And what lies hidden in sealed chambers beneath the world's most famous monument? Each discovery is a piece of a much larger, more incredible story. Are you ready to question the timeline of human achievement itself? Deep within the Temple of Hathor, a stone carving defies simple explanation. On a wall in Dendera, a relief shows a strange, elongated object, almost like a giant glass bulb. Inside it, a snake-like form stretches from one end to the other, held within what appears to be a supporting stand, connected by a cable to a box held by a priest. To the modern eye, it looks uncannily like an ancient light bulb. This is not a vague suggestion, but a precise, technical-looking depiction that has ignited imaginations for decades. Mainstream archaeology offers a compelling interpretation, seeing it as a symbolic scene from mythology, a snake representing divine power emerging from the sacred lotus flower. Yet the arrangement is so mechanically detailed that the comparison feels unavoidable. Could it be purely symbolic art, or might it hint at something more? Engineers who have studied the carving point to its startling resemblance to early electrical devices known as Crookes tubes, which produce light by passing current through a gas. The proportions, the filament-like form, the insulating base, all seem to align with principles of electrical engineering. This single image forces a profound question. Were the artists of Dendera simply illustrating a well-known myth, or were they documenting a piece of technology they understood and perhaps even used? The walls of their deepest, darkest sanctuaries and tombs, places where soot from torches would have been inevitable, are often remarkably clean. This enduring mystery suggests that our timeline for human innovation might be incomplete, that flashes of advanced knowledge could appear, be lost, and then be rediscovered millennia later. The Dendera carving stands as a silent stone question mark, challenging us to look beyond our assumptions about the past. The idea of ancient light is not confined to the stone walls of Dendera. Just across the sands, in what was once ancient Mesopotamia, an artifact was unearthed that seems to whisper of a forgotten spark of power. Known as the Baghdad Battery, this object was discovered in the 1930s near what is now the city of Baghdad. It is a simple, unassuming set of pieces, a clay jar roughly the size of a fist, inside which sits a rolled copper cylinder, and within that an iron rod. The jar shows signs of having been sealed with asphalt or bitumen, which would have held the rod in place, insulating it from the copper. To many who have examined it, the assembly bears a startling resemblance to a basic galvanic cell, the kind that generates a small electrical charge through a chemical reaction. If filled with an acidic liquid like vinegar or wine, this ancient jar could have produced a low but measurable voltage. While this artifact was not found on Egyptian soil, its implications rippled directly into our understanding of the region's interconnected knowledge. The ancient Near East was a web of trade, diplomacy, and shared ideas. If one civilization was experimenting with the principles of electricity, is it so difficult to believe that another, like Egypt, with its legendary mastery of chemistry and metallurgy, was aware of such concepts? Archaeologists like Dr. Elizabeth Stone remind us that the primary purpose of the Baghdad Battery is still debated. It might have been used for electroplating, to deposit a thin layer of gold or silver onto objects, a practice that would explain certain unexplained metallic finishes on artifacts from the period. Others suggest it could have had a medicinal or even a religious ceremonial purpose, a source of mysterious tingling or spark for rituals. yet its mere existence challenges the clean, linear timeline of invention we often take for granted. It invites us to reconsider the workshops of ancient Egyptian artisans. Could the incredible mirror-like finishes on some ceremonial daggers or the precise gold leaf on statues be the result of more than just skilled hammering? The Baghdad Battery suggests a world where ancient minds were not just philosophical or artistic, but deeply experimental, probing the natural world for its hidden forces. This single clay jar transforms from a curious museum piece into a keyhole, through which we glimpse a possibility, a network of lost knowledge that may have illuminated, both literally and figuratively, practices long since faded from history. What other Egyptian creations, admired today for their beauty, might secretly be testaments to a forgotten science? The quiet suggestion of forgotten power leads us to a place of raw physical force. Far from the symbolic carvings of Dendera in the sun-scorched granite quarries of Aswan, a different kind of mystery lies half-born from the earth. It is not a delicate artifact, but a monument of staggering ambition, frozen in the very act of its creation. This is the Unfinished Obelisk, a single piece of stone intended to be the largest obelisk ever raised, yet forever bound to the bedrock. It is a colossal snapshot, a moment suspended in time that speaks louder than any finished monument ever could. Here, the scale of Egyptian engineering is not implied, it is laid bare. The obelisk, if completed, would have stood over 100 feet tall and weighed nearly 1,200 tons. To stand beside it is to feel a profound sense of human endeavor, to witness the breathtaking confidence of a civilization that looked at a mountain and decided to shape a needle from it. The true revolution of this site is not in its grandeur but in its intimate, visible details. The surrounding rock face is a sprawling, open-air textbook. You can see the precise channels carved by workers to isolate the monolith, and the clear, repetitive pockmarks left by their tools. They did not use mysterious lasers or impossible machinery. Instead, as experts like archaeologist Mark Lehner have demonstrated, teams of laborers used simple balls of dolerite, a stone harder than granite, to methodically pound away at the bedrock. This technique, called pounding or pecking, required immense coordinated labor. Imagine the scene, the rhythmic sound of stone on stone echoing through the quarry for months, the sheer human persistence required to liberate a mountain. This visible evidence directly challenges modern myths of alien intervention or lost super science. It reveals a truth perhaps more astonishing: the power of organized human ingenuity and relentless effort. Yet the obelisk also tells a story of limits. Deep, catastrophic cracks run through its length, flaws that appeared during the extraction process and ultimately led to its abandonment. This was not a planned cessation, but a sudden recognition of failure. In that failure, however, we gain incredible insight. We learn where the stresses in the stone proved too great. We see the very moment the ancient engineers realized their project was doomed. This teaches us about the risks they took and the boundaries of their technology. It reminds us that the flawless monuments we admire in Luxor and Karnak were the successes, the survivors of a process fraught with potential disaster. The Unfinished Obelisk revolutionizes history by showcasing not just triumph, but also the tangible struggle behind it. It honors the resilience of the craftsmen, whose names are lost to time, but whose labor is permanently etched into the stone. Their story is one of both breathtaking ambition and human limitation, a powerful reminder that history is written as much by what was attempted and left behind as by what was gloriously completed. The ambition to shape mountains of stone speaks to a mind that understood form and force, but what of the unseen currents that move through the air? In a quiet tomb at Saqqara, an artifact was found that seems to grasp that very principle. Known as the Saqqara Bird, it is a small, elegant object carved from sycamore wood, light enough to hold in your hand, At first glance, it was simply catalogued as a bird figurine, a common enough funerary offering. But a closer look reveals something that stops you cold. Its wings are not the rounded, stylized wings of a sacred falcon or vulture. They are straight, angled, and perfectly symmetrical, with a distinct downward curve along their length. Its body is sleek and streamlined, and most strikingly, it has a vertical tail fin, a feature no bird in nature possesses. This is not a carving of a creature, it is the carving of a design, a shape built for the air. The implications of its form are what truly stir the imagination. When aeronautical engineers examined replicas of the Saqqara Bird, they noted its startlingly efficient aerodynamic profile. The angle of the wings, known as dihedral, provides inherent lateral stability, helping it self-correct in flight. The fuselage-like body and that crucial vertical tail fin work to prevent unwanted yaw and spin. Tests with scale models have shown that when launched with a little thrust, the artifact does not tumble or fall erratically. It glides, it sails through the air with a smooth, stable grace, behaving far more like a modern glider or even a basic airplane model than any toy bird. This performance is not a lucky accident of shape. It is the result of specific contours that manage airflow and balance. Mainstream Egyptology, represented by scholars like Dr. Salima Ikram, offers grounded interpretations. It could indeed be a sophisticated toy, a testament to an artisan's keen observation of hunting birds in flight. It might have been a ceremonial object, a vessel for spiritual symbolism where the form represented the soul's journey rather than a physical craft. Perhaps it was even a weather vane mounted on a sacred bark. These are all valid, likely possibilities, yet the precision of its design lingers in the mind as a provocative question mark. Did its creator possess an intuitive, almost scientific understanding of principles that would not be formally defined for over 2 millennia? The ancient Egyptians were master observers of nature, studying the flight of birds for omens and inspiration. Could this artifact represent the pinnacle of that observation, an abstracted model of flight mechanics so advanced it appears to be a blueprint? The Saqqara Bird revolutionizes history not by proving the existence of ancient airplanes, but by expanding the boundaries of ancient thought. It suggests that the intellectual curiosity which would one day lead to the skies was not born in a vacuum during the Renaissance. The seeds of aerodynamic thinking, of analyzing form and function for travel through a fluid, may have been planted and nurtured long ago, even if they never sprouted into full technological reality. This small wooden object challenges us to see the past not as a series of isolated achievements, but as a continuous, if sometimes fragmented, human conversation with the natural world. It asks us to consider whether genius can manifest not only in what is built at full scale, but in the elegant, prescient idea captured in a handful of wood, waiting centuries for the world to catch up to its silent, soaring logic. That small wooden glider hints at an ancient mind analyzing the physics of our world. But could such sophisticated thought have extended to mapping the heavens themselves? Far from the deserts of Egypt at the bottom of the Aegean Sea, a corroded bronze artifact was recovered that would become known as the world's first analog computer. The Antikythera Mechanism, a complex clockwork device of interlocking gears found in a Greek shipwreck, could predict planetary positions, lunar phases, and even eclipses with stunning accuracy. For decades, it was celebrated as a pinnacle of Hellenistic Greek engineering, a singular spark of genius. But recent, meticulous research is uncovering a story not of isolation, but of profound connection. Scholars like Alexander Jones have identified compelling fingerprints of Egyptian celestial science embedded within its very gears. The device's eclipse prediction cycle, a complex 223-month pattern, aligns not with Greek models, but with a system used by Babylonian astronomers who themselves were in deep dialogue with Egyptian sky watchers. More tellingly, the mechanism's calendar includes the ancient Egyptian civil year of exactly 365 days, a system the Greeks themselves did not use. This is not a minor detail, it is a fundamental architectural choice baked into the machine's logic. It suggests the designers were working from a foundation of Egyptian astronomical data and mathematical principles, meticulously recorded over centuries. The priests of Egypt had tracked the stars not just for timekeeping, but to align their temples and rituals with cosmic order. Their long, unbroken tradition of observation created a database of the sky, a treasure trove of cyclical knowledge. The genius of the Antikythera Mechanism may lie not in the invention of astronomical theory, but in the breathtaking mechanical translation of that shared knowledge into a tangible, turning model of the cosmos. This connection revolutionizes our view of ancient innovation. It shatters the myth of solitary cultural achievement, painting instead a vibrant picture of the Mediterranean as a network of exchanging ideas. Egyptian observational prowess, Babylonian arithmetic, and Greek mechanical artistry converged to create a device that would not be rivaled for over 1,000 years. It forces us to ask a profound question. How many other pinnacles of the ancient world, attributed to one civilization, were actually the children of many? The blurred lines between Greek and Egyptian achievement reveal a history woven from collaboration, where the quest to understand the universe was a collective human endeavor. Its secrets passed across seas and written not in scrolls alone, but in the intricate turning teeth of bronze gears. The intricate gears of the Antikythera Mechanism reveal a world of shared knowledge, but sometimes history's most profound secrets are not about what was built together, but about who was deliberately left out. In the shadow of Pharaoh Teti's pyramid at Saqqara, the sand recently gave up a secret it had held for over 4,000 years. Archaeologists clearing a new section of the necropolis made a discovery that instantly rewrote chapters of the 6th dynasty. They uncovered the magnificent, lavishly decorated tomb of a queen, her name inscribed in vivid hieroglyphs on the walls for the first time in millennia. Her name was Neith. Before this moment, she was completely absent from every known king list, every historical record. She was a ghost, a powerful ruler whose very existence had been erased from memory. The tomb itself is a testament to her immense status. The walls are alive with colorful reliefs and spells from the pyramid texts, the sacred funerary literature once reserved for pharaohs alone. Artifacts and offerings found within speak of a burial fit for a sovereign of the highest order. This was no minor consort. This was a woman who commanded the resources and reverence of a king. The inscriptions detail her full royal titulary, names and titles that proclaim her authority. She is called the one who sees Horus and Seth, a powerful epithet suggesting she played a crucial role in balancing the dualities of the kingdom, and the daughter of the god, asserting her divine right to rule. Egyptologist Dr. Zahi Hawass, who led the mission, has stated this find fundamentally changes our understanding of the period. Neith was likely a daughter of Pharaoh Teti, who then married his successor, Pharaoh Pepi II, becoming a key political linchpin between two reigns. Her influence appears to have extended deep into both governance and the religious sphere, a core pillar of stability during a complex time. Her complete omission from the official records is the real mystery here. Was this a deliberate act of damnatio memoriae, a condemnation of memory, perhaps by a later rival faction seeking to diminish her legacy? Or was it simply the slow erosion of time, the fragility of papyrus against the enduring stone of her tomb? Either possibility is revolutionary. It proves that the royal lineage we study in textbooks is not a complete family tree, but a carefully pruned version. Powerful branches, entire lines of influence, especially those held by women, could be cut away by the scissors of political necessity or the slow decay of time. The story of Queen Neith forces a humbling reevaluation. It highlights the immense gaps in our historical narrative, gaps not born from a lack of evidence, but from the selective nature of what ancient powers chose to commemorate and what we have been fortunate enough to rediscover. Her silent tomb now speaks volumes, asking us who else is missing from the story. What other queens, advisors, or rulers of equal power lie in still sealed chambers, their names waiting to be spoken again, ready to reshape our map of the past? The rediscovery of a lost queen proves that history is often a story with missing pages, but what happens when we turn to a page we thought we knew by heart, only to find it hiding blank spaces? The Great Pyramid of Giza stands as the most iconic, the most measured, the most intensely studied monument on Earth. For centuries, we believed we had mapped its secrets from the Grand Gallery to the King's Chamber. Its structure seemed definitive, a solved puzzle of ancient engineering. Then, modern science asked a new kind of question, not of what is there, but of what is not. Advanced scanning technologies, specifically a method called muon radiography, began to peer through the millions of stone blocks as if they were semi-transparent. Muons are subatomic particles that rain down from the atmosphere, passing through solid matter much like X-rays, but far more deeply. By placing sensitive detectors inside and around the pyramid, projects like Scan Pyramids could map where these particles were absorbed, creating a density scan of the entire structure. The resulting images sent shockwaves through the archaeological community. They revealed not just anomalies but distinct, large-scale voids. One, dubbed the Big Void, sits directly above the Grand Gallery, a chamber-like space over 100 feet long. Another, the North Face Corridor, hints at a passageway hidden behind the iconic chevron stones near the original entrance. These are not minor cracks or rubble fills, but architecturally significant empty spaces. Their very existence forces a profound and humbling admission. Even after millennia of exploration, the Great Pyramid, a symbol of human certainty, is still keeping secrets from us. The immediate, thrilling question is, of course, what are they for? Researchers offer a spectrum of possibilities, each more fascinating than the last. They could be structural, cleverly designed by the ancient builders to redistribute the immense weight of the pyramid away from the known chambers below, a feat of engineering foresight we are only now appreciating. They might be ritual spaces, sealed chambers meant not for the physical remains of a pharaoh, but for the symbolic journey of his spirit, containing artifacts or inscriptions meant to guide him in the afterlife. Or, in the most tantalizing scenario, they could be actual repositories, holding items deemed too sacred or powerful to be placed in the traditional burial chambers. The revolution here is not just in the discovery of new rooms, but in the paradigm shift it demands. This find dismantles the assumption that we have finished exploring the ancient world's greatest wonders. It proves that our understanding is limited by the tools of our time. For centuries, exploration meant physical intrusion, often damaging and limited to accessible passages. Today, it means using the very fabric of the universe, subatomic particles, to non-invasively interrogate the past. This technological leap urges us to shift from a posture of knowing to one of perpetual curiosity. The pyramid builders, masters of both stone and symbolism, clearly designed with layers of intention. These hidden chambers suggest a final, profound layer of meaning, a last testament encoded not in hieroglyphs, but in empty space itself. They challenge us to reconsider the pyramid's true function. Was it solely a tomb or something more complex, a cosmological machine, a resonance chamber, or a permanent monument to knowledge we have yet to decipher? The silent voids within the Great Pyramid now ask the loudest questions, reminding us that the most enduring mysteries are not always lost to time, but sometimes waiting patiently in plain sight for us to develop the eyes to see them. Hidden chambers within pyramids speak of secrets meant to stay sealed, but other artifacts are open books, their stories carved in plain sight for anyone who understands the language of imagery. One such object, a knife, holds a narrative that rewrites the opening chapter of Egyptian history. Discovered near the village of Gebel el-Arak, this is no ordinary blade. Crafted from fine flint with a handle of carved ivory, it dates to the Naqada period, a time before the first pharaohs, when Egypt was a land of competing chiefdoms. At first glance, it is a masterpiece of prehistoric craftsmanship, but the scenes etched into its handle tell a tale that stretches far beyond the Nile Valley. On one side, a chaotic battle rages. Warriors with distinctive hairstyles and garments, unlike any known from early Egypt, grapple with each other. Their depiction is startlingly similar to artistic styles found in ancient Mesopotamia, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, home to the Sumerian civilization. On the other side, a fleet of boats glides in procession. These are not the simple reed vessels of the Nile, but high-prowed, high-sterned ships with central cabins, designs that mirror seals and carvings from distant Sumer. This is not a local scene, this is a snapshot of contact. The Gebel el-Arak knife is a passport stamp from a journey taken over 5,000 years ago. It provides tangible, undeniable evidence that the people of the Nile were in communication with the cradle of civilization hundreds of miles to the east, long before the pyramids were even a dream. Archaeologists like Dr. Toby Wilkinson see this artifact as a keystone. It proves the existence of a pre-dynastic network, a web of exchange that carried not just goods, but ideas, artistic motifs, and possibly foundational technologies. Imagine the route, a combination of arduous overland travel and daring voyages along the coast of the Arabian Peninsula, connecting two worlds on the brink of civilization. This single ceremonial object, perhaps owned by a chieftain as a symbol of prestige and far-reaching connections, shatters the old paradigm of Egypt developing in splendid isolation. It revolutionizes our timeline by showing that globalization is not a modern invention, but an ancient impulse. The foundations of Egyptian society, its art, its iconography of power, even its early concepts of kingship, may have been influenced by these profound early exchanges. The knife challenges us to see the birth of civilization not as separate lights flickering on in distant valleys, but as a constellation, each culture illuminating and influencing the others. It asks a pivotal question: how much of what we consider uniquely Egyptian was, in fact, forged in the crucible of these early, international conversations? The answer suggests that from its very infancy, Egypt was not a closed kingdom, but a dynamic listener and learner in a vast, interconnected Bronze Age world. The blade from Gebel el-Arak reveals a world of ancient connection, but what of the internal crises that threaten to sever Egypt from its own lifeblood? On the granite boulders of Sehel Island near Aswan, a text known as the Famine Stele tells a story of desperation. It recounts a devastating 7-year famine during the reign of the 3rd dynasty pharaoh Djoser, a crisis so severe it shook the foundations of the kingdom. The narrative describes the pharaoh's despair, his troubled sleep, and the divine intervention of the god Khnum, relayed through a dream to the legendary vizier Imhotep. This would be a powerful myth on its own, a tale of royal piety rewarded by the gods, but the stele does not stop with the miraculous promise of relief. It continues with a staggering list, a detailed geographical and mineralogical survey of the region. The text names specific wadis, hills, and mining districts, cataloging the resources available, from precious metals like gold and copper to essential stones for building and crafting. It reads less like a prayer and more like an engineer's field report, a practical guide to the economic arteries of the land. Modern geological surveys have confirmed the astonishing accuracy of these ancient references. The places listed are real, the resources are there. Scholar Dr. Rosalie David emphasizes that this transforms the stele from a simple religious monument into a sophisticated technical document. It reveals that the response to catastrophe was not solely spiritual but intensely pragmatic. The famine likely triggered a massive state-sponsored initiative to secure resources, to reopen quarries, and to re-establish trade and production networks. The stele itself, carved centuries after the events it describes, served as a permanent public record of both the crisis and the solution, a stone-bound manual for future generations facing similar hardship. This find revolutionizes our view of ancient record-keeping. It shows that myth and science were not opposing forces, but intertwined strands of the same rope used to pull a civilization from the brink. The story of divine intervention provided the moral and political authority for the immense, practical labor of resource mapping and extraction. The ancient Egyptians were masterful problem solvers, and their wisdom was encoded not in secret scrolls, but in the very texts displayed for all to see, blending the language of the gods with the precise vocabulary of the earth. It forces us to look anew at other religious inscriptions, wondering what layers of practical knowledge, what maps of survival, might be waiting within the hymns and prayers, a testament to a civilization that learned to read the landscape as carefully as they read the stars. The Famine Stele reveals a civilization that mapped its resources to survive, but what happens when the greatest resource is knowledge itself, stored not in texts but in a single, colossal building? Ancient historians spoke of such a place with awe. Herodotus, who walked the sands in the 5th century before the Common Era, described a monument that left him utterly speechless. Near the Hawara pyramid, he claimed to have seen a labyrinth so vast and complex it surpassed even the pyramids. He wrote of 3,000 rooms, half above ground and half below, a dizzying maze of courts, halls, and colonnades, its walls covered in intricate carvings, its very purpose a mystery of administration and ritual. For centuries, scholars dismissed this as the exaggerated travelogue of a Greek tourist, a fanciful legend. The sands of the site revealed only scattered stones, seemingly confirming the story as myth. Yet the legend refused to die, whispered through the accounts of other classical writers like Strabo and Pliny. They all insisted this labyrinth was real, the heart of Egyptian power during the Middle Kingdom. The question lingered, a ghost in the historical record. Was Herodotus simply telling tales, or had he actually stood at the edge of a forgotten world? Modern technology has now offered a startling answer. Recent geophysical surveys using ground-penetrating radar and other non-invasive tools have scanned the area around Hawara. The results were not just promising, they were revolutionary. Beneath the unassuming surface, the sensors detected the clear, unmistakable signature of massive, grid-like foundations. The scans outline what appears to be a colossal, rectangular complex with a dense network of walls arranged in a precise, orderly pattern. The scale is monumental, covering an area that could indeed contain thousands of chambers. The ghost in the sand has taken form. This is not a random ruin, it is the footprint of something designed with immense intention, a structure whose ambition seems to rival the pyramids not in height, but in sheer complexity and scope. The potential discovery of the lost labyrinth does more than just validate an ancient tourist, it upends our understanding of Egyptian civilization. We have long focused on tombs and temples, places of death and worship. The labyrinth suggests a third, equally vital pillar, a central administrative capital. Imagine it not as a maze to get lost in, but as a supreme bureaucratic machine made of stone. This could have been the centralized archive, the tax collection hub, the judicial court, and the ceremonial focal point for the entire region, perhaps even the whole kingdom during its era. It represents the practical engine of the state, where scribes managed the grain supply, priests coordinated festivals, and governors received their orders. If the pyramids showcase the Egyptians' relationship with eternity, the labyrinth would reveal their genius for organizing the present. Excavating it fully could unlock an entire library of inscribed walls, detailing laws, trade ledgers, diplomatic correspondence, and daily life in a way no tomb ever could. It challenges us to listen more carefully to the voices of the past, to understand that what we dismiss as myth is often a distorted memory of a profound truth. The buried grid beneath Hawara asks us a tantalizing question. What chapters of history, what lost systems of governance and knowledge are waiting in that silent, sand-shrouded archive, ready to rewrite our story of how an empire truly functioned? A golden tongue glinted in the darkness of a tomb at Papyrus Magna, a final gift for a silent journey. This was not a piece of jewelry for adornment, but a carefully crafted amulet placed directly in the mouth of a mummy from the Greco-Roman period. The practice itself was known from ancient funerary texts, which describe the ritual of providing the deceased with a voice in the afterlife. But to find it so perfectly executed, the gleaming gold still positioned as the priests left it, is a rare and direct window into a deeply personal belief. In the Egyptian view of the next world, the ability to speak was not taken for granted. The deceased would need to testify before the gods, to recite the correct spells, to declare their innocence in the hall of judgment. A tongue of gold was believed to ensure this vital faculty, to make one's words persuasive and true before the divine tribunal. It was a safeguard for the soul, a piece of portable eloquence for eternity. Egyptologist Dr. Kathleen Martinez, who leads the excavations, points to the profound cultural fusion this represents. By the Greco-Roman era, Egypt was under foreign rule, yet its ancient religious traditions not only persisted, they evolved and integrated new influences. This mummy, potentially from a family of Greek or Roman settlers, was prepared according to the most sacred Egyptian rites. The golden tongue is a powerful symbol of this integration. It shows that the newcomers were not imposing their customs, but were instead being drawn into the powerful spiritual current of the land, adopting its practices to secure their own place in the afterlife. This find revolutionizes our understanding of cultural change. It illustrates that religious adaptation was often a personal choice, a quiet, profound act of faith made by individuals seeking comfort and continuity in a changing world. The hope placed in that small piece of gold speaks across millennia, not of empires and conquests, but of a universal human anxiety, the fear of being silenced, of being unable to tell one's own story when it matters most. It shifts our focus from the grand statues of pharaohs to the intimate aspirations of ordinary people. How did such a belief influence daily life? It suggests a culture where one's words and legacy were seen as eternal possessions, where preparing for a final, decisive conversation was as important as preparing one's tomb. This golden tongue is more than a curious artifact. It is a key to understanding how ancient people grappled with identity and memory under foreign rule, choosing to speak the language of the gods in the way they believed would be heard forever. While the golden tongue ensured a voice in the afterlife, the living sought to hear the voice of the gods in the light of the rising sun. At the dawn of Egypt's 5th dynasty, a pharaoh named Userkaf built not just a tomb for his body, but a gateway for the sun itself. His sun temple at Abusia, though less famous than the Great Pyramids, is a monument to a different kind of power, one of precise celestial alignment. This is not a structure of dark, sealed chambers, but of open courtyards and deliberate apertures, designed to catch the light in a very specific way. Archaeologists and archaeoastronomers studying its ruins, like Dr. Juan Belmont, have mapped its orientation with care. They discovered that the temple's axis is aligned so that on the equinoxes, when day and night are of equal length, the rays of the rising sun would stream directly through its entrance and into the heart of the sanctuary, illuminating the altar where rituals were performed. This was no accident of construction. It was a built-in celestial clock, a stone confirmation of the solar cycle. The effect would have been dramatic, a beam of light transforming the dark sacred space into a radiant chamber, visibly demonstrating the pharaoh's connection to Ra, the sun god, and the god's renewal of the cosmic order. This architectural feat reveals a profound truth about Egyptian spirituality. Their religion was not a matter of blind faith, but an empirical science of the sky. The priests who designed Userkaf's temple were meticulous observers. They tracked the sun's path year after year, noting its northern and southern limits at the solstices and its balanced point at the equinoxes. They then encoded that hard-won data into limestone and granite, creating a machine that used light instead of gears. This temple, and others like it, functioned as both observatory and calendar. By watching where the light fell on certain festival days, they could regulate the agricultural year, time religious ceremonies, and reaffirm the pharaoh's role as the intermediary who maintained harmony between the earthly and celestial realms. This revolutionizes our view of the priesthood. They were not merely ritualists, but the earliest astronomers and physicists, using the tools of architecture to measure time and predict celestial events. Their devotion was expressed through measurement, their worship through witness. It prompts a compelling question. If one relatively obscure temple holds such a sophisticated code, how many others are waiting for us to read their alignments? Every sloping corridor, every strategically placed window, every off-axis orientation in temples across Egypt might be a deliberate signature, a line in a grand architectural manuscript written in sunlight and shadow. The legacy of Userkaf's temple is a reminder that science and spirituality were once a single, luminous discipline, a pursuit of understanding that sought to literally bring the heavens down to earth. The sun temples and labyrinth foundations reveal the grand architecture of state power, but the true engine of that power ran on ink and calculation. Far from the royal monuments, in a provincial tomb at Deir el-Bashar, a different kind of treasure was found, one that speaks not of gods or glory, but of grain and goats. It is a leather scroll, remarkably preserved, its surface covered not in sacred spells, but in meticulous columns of administrative script. This is a tax record from the Middle Kingdom, a snapshot of the kingdom's circulatory system. The document lists in precise detail the commodities owed to the state, quantities of barley and emmer wheat, counts of cattle and fowl, and even allocations of labor from local villages. Here, the abstract concept of a pharaoh's rule becomes tangible, measured in baskets and head of livestock. Egyptologist Dr. Andreas Dorn emphasizes how such a record shatters any romantic vision of ancient rule. It shows a government that was deeply, pragmatically engaged in the granular details of survival. An army of scribes, the true bureaucrats of the empire, tracked these flows of wealth with a diligence that would impress any modern accountant. This was the mechanism that funded everything from the soldier's ration to the temple's offering, from the quarry worker's wage to the pyramid's construction. The revolution of this leather scroll is in its perspective. For centuries, history was written by the victors, celebrating conquests and divine mandates on temple walls. This document gives voice to the governed, the farmers and herders whose surplus fed the civilization. Their lives are captured in these dry entries, a record of their contribution and, implicitly, their burden. We can almost hear the scratch of the scribe's reed pen in a dusty provincial office, feel the weight of the harvest being assessed, and sense the quiet tension of meeting a quota. This administrative brilliance is likely a key to Egypt's staggering longevity. A system this detailed could redistribute resources in times of local famine, could plan massive projects years in advance, and could maintain social order through predictable, if demanding, expectations. It created a stability that allowed culture and religion to flourish for millennia. The scroll connects us to a lived reality far removed from gold and lapis lazuli. It asks us to consider civilization not just as a collection of beautiful artifacts, but as a complex, often mundane, agreement between people and power, an agreement written not on stone but on perishable leather, surviving against all odds to tell the true story of how an empire was sustained, one calculated basket of grain at a time. The meticulous ledgers of the Middle Kingdom show a civilization already in full command of its symbols, but those symbols had to begin somewhere. Long before the first tax scroll, before even the first carved name of a pharaoh, the language of power was being sketched onto a humble piece of stone. In the quiet predynastic era, a simple object reveals the first tentative strokes of a culture finding its voice. This is the Naqada Icy palette, a flat, often shield-shaped stone slab used for grinding cosmetics. To the untrained eye, it might seem a purely functional item, but its surface is a crowded, vibrant world. Etched into the stone are not random scratches, but deliberate compositions of abstract symbols, spirals, and stylized animal figures, like herds of long-horned cattle or processions of ostriches. This is not yet writing, but it is undeniably communication. Each curve and figure is a precursor, a visual thought placed with clear intention. Scholars studying these palettes, like Dr. Stan Hendricks, see them as a critical missing link. They represent a society experimenting with the very idea of representation, moving beyond depicting a single animal for simple decoration and toward arranging images to convey something more complex, perhaps a story, a ritual, or a claim of identity. The spirals could symbolize water or eternity. The herds might speak of wealth or a successful hunt. The arrangement itself could mark a territorial boundary or a social affiliation. This palette revolutionizes history by pulling back the curtain on the slow, beautiful birth of a visual language. It demonstrates that the iconic hieroglyphs of the pharaohs did not appear fully formed, as a gift from the gods. They were the culmination of centuries of such experimentation, where these early symbols were refined, standardized, and gradually assigned specific sounds and meanings. The roots of Egyptian civilization are shown to be deep and organic, a gradual cultural synthesis where various communities across the Nile Valley shared and blended these visual ideas. The palette invites us to see prehistory not as a dark, silent age, but as a dynamic canvas of trial and error, a bustling workshop where the core grammar of an entire civilization's art and writing was being patiently invented, one ground pigment and one carved line at a time. It asks a quiet but profound question. What other seemingly ordinary objects from this distant era hold the faint, forgotten blueprints for the pyramids, the gods, and the very concept of a kingdom that would one day rule the known world? A world of personal faith lived quietly in the corners of Egyptian homes. While grand temples celebrated the cosmic order, the most urgent prayers were often whispered in bedrooms and birthing chambers, directed not at distant, majestic gods, but at a protector who felt like family. In a humble domestic space, far from any royal necropolis, archaeologists uncovered a small, worn statue of the dwarf god Bes. His image is startling, even comical to modern eyes, with a leonine face, a protruding tongue, and a stout, muscular body, often depicted dancing or playing a drum. This was not a state-sanctioned icon for a national festival. It was a personal guardian, a cherished household god. Bes held a unique and vital role. He was the defender of the home and family, specifically invoked to ward off evil spirits and misfortune during life's most vulnerable moments. His protection was sought fiercely over mothers and newborns during childbirth, and his likeness was placed in bedrooms to ensure safe sleep and guard against nightmares. This small statue revolutionizes history by pulling back the curtain on the intimate, emotional core of Egyptian spirituality. It shifts our gaze from the soaring columns of Karnak to the sunlit floor of a modest dwelling, reminding us that faith was as much about the anxiety of a first-time mother as it was about the pharaoh's journey to the stars. The presence of Bes in the home reveals a sophisticated, layered belief system. Alongside the formal, rigid theology of the state temples, there thrived a vibrant, personal cult of daily protection. Families did not see these as contradictory, but as complementary, a spiritual ecosystem where cosmic powers managed the universe and friendly, approachable deities managed the household. This personal connection likely provided immense comfort and a sense of agency. In a world filled with unseen dangers, from illness to difficult labor, having a specific, fierce protector like Bes offered psychological resilience. It transformed fear into ritual, giving families a tangible way to assert control over their well-being. The statue's worn surfaces, touched and handled over generations, speak of a deep, practical devotion. How did such beliefs influence the community? The shared veneration of domestic gods like Bes created an invisible web of common practice, a cultural language of care that strengthened communal bonds. Neighbors would understand the significance of a Bes amulet on a child, or the image painted on a bedroom wall. This shared spiritual toolkit for navigating life's hardships fostered a collective sense of security and identity, proving that the true pillars of civilization are often found not in the stone of monuments, but in the quiet, repeated acts of faith that helped ordinary people face each new day with a little more courage. The intimate care of a household god reveals a culture deeply invested in well-being, but the ancient Egyptian approach to healing extended far beyond protective charms. In the cool, dry darkness of a tomb, a very different kind of scroll was preserved, one that speaks not to the afterlife, but to the urgent preservation of life itself. Known as the Edwin Smith Papyrus and complemented by texts like the Ebers Papyrus, this document is a breathtaking window into a world where myth and medicine were not opposites but partners. Its pages detail surgical procedures for wounds and fractures with a startlingly clinical tone, examining patients from head to foot, diagnosing with clear logic, and prescribing treatments ranging from suturing to splinting. Yet woven throughout this scientific rigor is a powerful spiritual thread, most beautifully exemplified in the use of the Wadjet eye, the sacred eye of Horus. This was not just a symbol of protection, it was a precise mathematical tool. In the myth, the eye of the god Horus was torn apart and later restored. Each piece of the eye was assigned a specific fraction, 1/2, 1/4, 1/8, and so on. Egyptian physicians adopted this system as a standardized unit of measurement for mixing medicinal ingredients. When a recipe called for 1/32nd part of honey or 1/64th part of incense, the scribe was using the fractions of the sacred eye. This was a profound fusion, where mythology provided the framework for exact science. As expert Dr. James Allen notes, this allowed for reproducible recipes, a cornerstone of any advanced medical system. A healer in Thebes and a healer in Memphis could follow the same formula, ensuring consistency in treatment. This reveals a holistic philosophy that modern medicine is only recently re-embracing. The ancient Egyptians saw no contradiction between setting a broken arm with a splint and reciting a spell to invoke the healing power of a god. The physical and the spiritual were two sides of the same diagnostic tablet. This papyrus revolutionizes history by dismantling the simplistic view of ancient medicine as mere superstition. It showcases a culture capable of keen observation, systematic classification, and empirical problem-solving, all while operating within a rich symbolic universe. Their practices, documented centuries before Hippocrates, directly influenced Greek and Roman medical traditions, forming a foundational layer of Western medicine. The true legacy of the Wadjet eye is its challenge to our modern categories. It asks us to consider how many other ancient sciences we have misunderstood because we failed to recognize their language. What other fields of knowledge, from astronomy to architecture, use the poetry of myth to encode the prose of mathematical law, creating a complete, interconnected vision of how the world works? The Hyksos palace at Avaris shatters the myth of a dark age. For centuries, Egyptian records painted the Hyksos, rulers during the Second Intermediate Period, as brutal foreign invaders, a blight upon the land to be expelled and erased. The very name Hyksos, from an Egyptian phrase, meant rulers of foreign lands, a label dripping with disdain. History, it seemed, was written by the victors of the subsequent New Kingdom, who framed this era as one of chaos and cultural decline. Then the spade of the archaeologist began to tell a different story at Tel el-Dab-A, the ancient city of Avaris. Here, the remains of a Hyksos palace emerged from the soil, not as the fortress of a destructive warlord, but as the administrative heart of a sophisticated, hybrid kingdom. The architecture itself speaks of integration, not imposition. While the palace layout follows a distinct Canaanite plan, with a central courtyard and broad reception halls familiar from cities like Megiddo, the builders incorporated classic Egyptian elements like columned porticos and specialized storage magazines for grain. This was not a foreign enclave stubbornly clinging to its ways, but a seat of power consciously blending two worlds. Within its rooms, artifacts sealed the argument. Alongside Canaanite-style pottery and weapons, excavators found seals and scarabs bearing the cartouches of Hyksos kings, inscribed not in a foreign script, but in perfectly executed Egyptian hieroglyphs. They were using the language and symbols of pharaonic authority to govern. Even more telling were the fragments of vibrant frescoes discovered in the palace, depicting scenes of bull leaping and intricate geometric patterns. This art is unmistakably Minoan, originating from the island of Crete, hundreds of miles across the Mediterranean. Its presence in the delta proves the Hyksos were not isolated despots, but key nodes in a vast, thriving trade network that connected Egypt to the Aegean and the Levant. These frescoes are windows into a cosmopolitan court, one that valued luxury goods and international artistry. This palace revolutionizes history by forcing a complete re-evaluation of the so-called Second Intermediate Period. It reveals the Hyksos not as mere destroyers, but as pragmatic administrators who recognized the strength and utility of Egyptian bureaucratic and cultural systems. They adopted them, adapted them, and in doing so maintained the continuity of the state apparatus. Their rule was a period of intense cultural exchange, a simmering crucible where technologies, ideas, and artistic styles melded. The horse and chariot, the composite bow, and new bronze working techniques, all later hallmarks of the mighty New Kingdom military, were likely introduced or significantly advanced through this Hyksos connection. The palace at Avaris asks us a pivotal question. How did this period of foreign influence, once vilified, ultimately forge a stronger, more resilient Egypt? The answer seems to lie in the very nature of cultural encounter. By being forced to engage with and ultimately expel a formidable foreign power, Egypt was shaken from any insularity. It emerged from the experience with a hardened, unified national identity and a suite of adopted military technologies that would fuel its imperial expansion. The Hyksos, in their rise and fall, did not weaken Egypt, they inadvertently tempered it. Their legacy was absorbed into the fabric of the civilization, proving that history's most transformative chapters are often not about purity, but about the dynamic, sometimes difficult, alchemy of exchange. Standing guard for millennia, the Great Sphinx seems the very embodiment of timeless permanence, yet its stone surface may hold a diary of climate change written in the language of erosion. Geologist Dr. Robert Schoch approached the monument not as an archaeologist, but as a scientist reading the autobiography of rock. His analysis focused on the deep, undulating, vertical weathering patterns visible on the Sphinx's body and the walls of its enclosure. This type of erosion, he argued, is not primarily caused by wind and sand, which produce horizontal scouring. Instead, it is characteristic of prolonged, heavy rainfall, water running down the limestone in sheets over many, many centuries. This observation leads to a profound chronological problem. The traditional dating places the Sphinx's construction around 2,500 years before the Common Era, during the reign of Pharaoh Khafre, in the middle of a hyper-arid desert climate that has persisted for over 5,000 years. If Dr. Skock's interpretation is correct, the Sphinx must have been carved during a period when the Giza Plateau experienced a significantly wetter environment. Geological and paleoclimatic data suggests the last such rainy phase in northeastern Africa ended around 5,000 years before the Common Era, or perhaps even earlier. This would push the Sphinx's origin back into deep prehistory, potentially making it thousands of years older than the pyramids that stand behind it. The hypothesis is, of course, deeply controversial. Many Egyptologists and other geologists offer alternative explanations for the weathering, pointing to factors like subsurface water movement, chemical weathering from dew, or the effects of wind-driven sand and salt crystallization. They argue the construction techniques and stylistic elements of the Sphinx align perfectly with Old Kingdom artistry. The debate itself, however, is where the true revolution lies. It forces a vital interdisciplinary conversation where the slow testimony of geology meets the precise chronology of archaeology. It challenges us to consider that the Sphinx might not be a contemporary of the 4th Dynasty pyramids, but a much more ancient monument that those pharaohs discovered, restored, and adopted. This idea resonates powerfully with fragmentary Egyptian legends that speak of a much older foundational epoch, a time of the followers of Horus, or a first time, when the gods themselves were said to have walked the land. Could the Sphinx be a surviving artifact from that shadowy, pre-dynastic golden age, a relic of a sophisticated culture lost to the shifting sands of both time and climate? Whether one accepts the specific dating or not, the water erosion hypothesis performs an essential service. It reminds us that our historical frameworks are not set in stone, but are working models, always provisional and subject to revision by new evidence or a new way of seeing. It encourages a humility before the past, an acknowledgement that the grand narratives we teach are built on the evidence we have found so far. The next layer of evidence, waiting in a core sample or a satellite survey, could always invite a rewrite. This perspective transforms the Sphinx from a static statue into a dynamic puzzle. It asks us to look at other ancient monuments around the world with fresh eyes. What other megaliths, temples, or earthworks show weathering patterns or alignments that seem to whisper of a different climate, a different sky, or a different era of builders? The search is no longer just for who built something, but for when they truly could have built it under what forgotten sun. The Sphinx, in its silent vigilance, may be guarding not just a tomb, but a secret about time itself, a secret written in the rain that fell long before history began. Beneath the sands of Saqqara lies a different kind of city of the dead, one not for kings or nobles, but for creatures of feather and fur. This is the necropolis of the animal mummies, a sprawling underground network where millions upon millions of carefully wrapped bundles were laid to rest. The scale is almost incomprehensible, a population of ibises, falcons, cats, dogs, and even crocodiles, each prepared as a sacred offering. These were not beloved pets buried with their owners, but something far more systematic, votive gifts intended to carry prayers directly to specific gods. An ibis mummy for Thoth, god of wisdom, a cat for Bastet, goddess of protection, a falcon for Horus. This was faith made tangible, and it operated on an industrial scale. Recent excavations led by teams like that of Dr. Salama Ikram have revealed the astonishing infrastructure behind this practice. They uncovered what can only be described as ancient catacomb factories, complete with breeding pens, preparation areas, and miles of dedicated galleries for interment. The discovery of so many animals, all at similar stages of development, points to a managed system, a form of species husbandry dedicated entirely to the afterlife economy. This vast enterprise revolutionizes history by revealing a side of ancient life rarely captured in stone carvings of pharaohs and battles. It shows an economy powerfully driven by spiritual demand. A whole sector of society, from breeders and feeders to the priests who performed the mummification rites and the vendors who sold the prepared mummies at temple gates, relied on this cycle of devotion. Pilgrims would purchase a mummy as an eternal embodiment of their prayer, an offering that would forever advocate for them in the divine court. This was not a marginal practice, but a central pillar of cultural and economic life, influencing trade, employment, and even resource allocation. The environmental impact was profound. The demand for specific species, like the sacred ibis, likely led to their managed proliferation in temple grounds, and some studies suggest it may have contributed to local population pressures, an early example of human belief directly shaping an ecosystem. This challenges any simplistic view of ancient economies as based solely on agriculture, taxation, or warfare. It introduces a powerful third driver, the economy of divine favor, where hope and faith were measurable commodities traded in linen and bitumen. What does this tell us about the Egyptian worldview? It reflects a universe where every element was connected. Animals were not separate from the divine, but vessels for it, living links between the human and godly realms. By offering a mummified animal, a person was inserting a permanent piece of the natural order into the sacred machinery, a cog that would keep their petition turning forever. This practice underscores a belief in a cosmic order so intricate that maintaining it required constant physical participation from every level of society. The catacombs at Saqqara are a silent testament to the depth of that belief, a mountainside of whispered prayers preserved in sacred form, reminding us that for the ancients, the boundary between the spiritual and the material was porous, and the most profound transactions were often conducted not with coin, but with a carefully wrapped bundle of reverence. A final mystery is carved not in a hidden chamber, but in plain sight on a temple wall at Abydos. Among the hieroglyphs on a lintel in the temple of Seti I, a cluster of shapes seems to leap out with startling familiarity. To the modern eye, one looks unmistakably like a helicopter with a rounded cockpit and a distinct tail rotor. Nearby, another resembles a submarine or a tank, and yet another could be mistaken for a futuristic aircraft. The immediate, electrifying interpretation is clear. Ancient Egyptians were depicting advanced technology they had witnessed or perhaps even used. This interpretation, however, collides with a more grounded archaeological explanation. Egyptologists point to the phenomenon of a palimpsest, a term for a surface that has been written upon, erased, and written over again. In this case, they argue, the stone was likely reused. The original carvings, perhaps the royal names and titles of Pharaoh Seti I, were later partially plastered over and recarved with the titles of his son, Ramesses II. Over centuries, the plaster fell away and erosion took its toll, leaving the deeply cut, overlapping hieroglyphs to merge into entirely new, accidental shapes. The helicopter is not a single, intentional image, but the chance combination of parts of several different symbols like a bird, an arm, and a basket, all superimposed. This explanation is supported by the location of these shapes, their lack of context within any larger technological scene, and the clear evidence of recarving found elsewhere in the temple. Yet the power of the image persists, sparking a debate that goes far beyond a single piece of stone. It becomes a fascinating case study in the psychology of perception. We see what we are conditioned to see. A mind steeped in the 21st century looks at weathered stone and immediately recognizes the silhouette of a helicopter because that shape holds meaning for us. An ancient priest passing the same spot would have seen only the sacred names of his pharaohs, perhaps slightly muddled by time. This find revolutionizes history not by proving ancient aviation, but by holding up a mirror to our own interpretive process. It forces a vital question: where is the line between an open mind and a projection of our own desires onto the past? The Abydos carvings teach a crucial lesson in balance. On one hand, they warn against the seductive pull of sensationalism, of fitting awkward evidence into preconceived narratives about ancient astronauts or lost super-civilizations. We must respect the meticulous work of epigraphers and linguists who can trace the actual history of the stone. On the other hand, they encourage a healthy, humble curiosity. They remind us that our understanding of ancient symbolism is incomplete. Could some of these bizarre composite shapes, while not literal helicopters, represent concepts or mythic vessels for which we have no modern equivalent? The ancient artistic vocabulary was rich with metaphor and abstraction meant to convey spiritual, not mechanical, truths. The true challenge is to sit with the discomfort of not knowing, to accept that some ancient intentions may be permanently beyond our grasp, filtered through a world utterly foreign to our own. This final mystery brings our journey full circle, back to the fundamental act of looking. It asks us to examine not just the artifacts, but the lens through which we view them. What other wonders from the past are we misinterpreting because we lack the cultural codebook, or because we are too eagerly applying our own? The silent stones of Egypt continue to speak, but their loudest message may be a caution to listen more carefully, to question our assumptions, and to embrace the vast, beautiful mystery of all we have yet to truly understand. The journey through these 20 discoveries leaves us not with a final answer, but with a profound shift in perspective. Ancient Egypt emerges not as a static land of tombs and pharaohs, but as a vibrant, humming center of innovation, a place where the line between spiritual insight and scientific curiosity was beautifully blurred. From the potential for forgotten electrical principles in Dendera to the precise celestial clocks of sun temples, from the global trade networks hinted at by a single knife to the industrial-scale faith of the animal catacombs, each artifact is a whisper from a much more dynamic conversation. These whispers collectively form a new story, one where Egyptian civilization was deeply experimental, globally connected, and intellectually fearless. The true revolution is not in proving one specific advanced technology, but in dismantling the simplistic timeline we once accepted. We see now a culture capable of staggering engineering projects born from organized labor, yes, but also capable of profound abstract thought, encoding mathematics into mythology and aerodynamics into wood. The hidden chambers in the Great Pyramid and the lost labyrinth beneath the sand are powerful metaphors for history itself, reminding us that our knowledge is always partial, always awaiting the next tool, the next question, the next turn of the spade. This is the enduring gift of Egypt's mysteries. They do not allow us to become complacent in our understanding. They challenge the very notion that history is a settled record, inviting us instead to see it as a living field of inquiry, where every new discovery has the potential to rewrite a chapter we thought we knew by heart. It asks us to look at all ancient cultures with fresh eyes, to consider the lost connections, the forgotten experiments, the quiet exchanges that shaped our world. So as you reflect on these 20 finds, let the questions linger. How does this change your view of human progress? What other civilizations might hold similar secrets, waiting for their moment of rediscovery? The past is not a distant, silent country. It is a conversation across millennia, and we are just beginning to learn its true language. We would love to hear which of these discoveries resonated most with you and why. Share your thoughts below, and if you enjoyed this deep dive into the shadows of time, be sure to subscribe. Until next time, keep wondering.